Ready or not, summer is coming, and Wayfair's Memorial Day clearance is on now. Right now through May 25th, get up to 70% off everything home at Wayfair. Plus, score amazing doorbuster deals all sale long and surprise flash deals on Memorial Day. We're talking thousands of products at every style and budget. Now is the time to save big on must-haves for your patio, backyard, and beyond. These savings won't last, so don't wait. Shop Wayfair's Memorial Day clearance now through May 25th.
Wayfair, every style, every home.
WeatherTech is made right here in America, and it's perfect for an American-made summer. Because we cannonball into summer, hike all over it, slide down it, camp in it. It's one ice cream-covered, sandy, soaking wet mess of a season, which is why WeatherTech floor liners and seat protectors are a must. We are road-tripping, beach-going, lake-jumping Americans, and that's just how we summer. WeatherTech, made in America for an American-made summer. Visit WeatherTech.com today.
Patricio, welcome to the Sports Management Podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
Great to have you on the show. You are the CEO of Racket Social Club. You're also having your own consultancy, working a lot in the racket sports industry. So can you tell us a little bit about what you're doing?
My everyday job is working as the CEO of Racket Social Club. Racket Social Club is part of Racket 360, which has 4 business units. One is Racket Social Club, and we have clubs in Houston, Texas. We have 2 locations. One is indoors with 5 paddle courts. The other one is outdoors with 4 paddle courts and 2 pickleball courts. Then we have a location in Denver, Colorado, which is an indoor club with 4 paddle courts and 4 pickleball courts. And then we have one more in Alpharetta, which is in the outskirts of Atlanta, Georgia. That is a big club that we just acquired that has 4 paddle courts, 6 pickleball courts, 18 tennis courts, 3 swimming pools, and a marina. And we used to lease the space inside of that club just for paddle. And since November, we acquired the whole club. And it's a full-on Racket Social Club now. And we're looking to, in the next few weeks, hopefully we will announce that we're opening some other locations. Besides Racket Social Club, Racket 360 owns Racket X, which is the big event and trade show in South Florida. And they also do, over the course of the year, one-day events in a lot of different places around the US. And this year in 2026, they're going to London for the first time outside of the US. Then RacketCentral.com, which is an e-commerce marketplace that sells paddle, pickleball, accessories, balls, apparel. And the 4th business unit of Racket 360 is the National Padel League, which is the largest amateur league for padel in the US.
That's fantastic. And as I mentioned before, you were introduced to me by Emiliano, who's also at Racket 360. So really interesting umbrella and ecosystem that you guys are building. So I know that you are also trying to help shape and grow Padel through data infrastructure and club innovation. How do you see Padel in the United States?
It's interesting. I first got into Padel long time ago in the late 80s and early 90s in Argentina, when the paddles were very, very thin. The walls were made out of concrete. The floor was made out of concrete. There were 4 meters on the side all the way around, actually, and you could not serve and volley. So that's how how long ago it was. And for a good period of time, about 20 years or so in the US, I didn't play at all. I would only play when I went back to visit. And most recently, I got again into paddle by playing a little bit. And then I co-founded a club called the Sports House, an indoor paddle and pickleball in Connecticut. That was 2023. That was my reconnection to the sport. And I wanted to know how many courts there were in the US, what they look like, where you could play. And I started collecting data because I was advising founders and I was advising clients that were investing a ton of money into facilities and into the sport, and they didn't really know what the market looked like. And when you only have a couple hundred clubs, it's easy to count. And I did that. I counted every single one of them. Last year, I released the first report on the US paddle market that counted how many courts, how many clubs, indoors, outdoors, pricing, where they're located. I also went through the tournament structure and coaching, and it was the first sort of paper on what the market in the US looked like. Since then, I've been keeping track of all this data. So now you're starting to see some patterns. It's definitely growing the last 2 years, 2024 and 2025. And the growth in terms of number of courts, it's around 80%. But sometimes when you start really small, 80% is not really that much. But in terms of growth over a period of time, then it is a lot. We're going to see if the same level of growth keeps up throughout the next few years or not. I think it's going to continue to grow, but I don't know if at that rate. One of the good things about the US, good or bad things, I guess, is that it takes so much work and time, and there's so much red tape, so many steps you have to take to open a club that slows down the growth. But at the same time, it helps not to overbuild in some areas, which is a good thing. But yeah, it's growing. There's more and more courts that are indoors, and it's over 40% of all the courts in the US are indoors. In Miami or South Florida is where most of the courts are, but there are a lot of other areas that are growing and pretty rapidly. One, it would be, in the New York area. And there's a lot of courts now are actually being built in the Chicago area, in Houston. Houston is the second city in the US, by the way, in terms of play. And then even in Massachusetts, in Boston, there's a lot of clubs that are opening up. So there's a lot of other areas that are going to continue to develop. I don't think that the growth will continue as rapidly in South Florida. It's going to grow in other areas more than in South Florida.
That makes sense. And I'm not sure if you're aware of Sweden, the padel landscape in Sweden during COVID. It boomed a lot because it was not so much red tape, as you mentioned, in the US. And then most of those clubs didn't survive when the hype calmed down a little bit. So the importance of building something on a foundation and real, instead of just, putting it in a warehouse and hope for the best.
Yeah, exactly. It's not just building the courts and then that's it. You have to take into consideration that some people will want to come and play on their own. Some will want to take lessons. Some will want to participate in a league, tournaments, and that's the stuff that goes on court. Then there's all the other things that are outside of the court as well that I think are important. And padel being so social and creating a space and a community of people that will come and hang out, I think it's really important. So building the courts and that's it, it's not enough to make a business successful.
Agreed. And you mentioned that when you did the report, you found some patterns. So what are some patterns that you see in US Padel?
Two main patterns that I see. One is that there's more and more courts being indoors. Most of the clubs that are opening now are indoors or some sort of mix between indoors and outdoors. That's one. And the second one is the multi-sport facilities. More and more of the clubs are padel and something else, or are clubs that don't have padel and add padel. A lot of country clubs or even tennis clubs or even some pickleball clubs that are adding padel. It's not just padel, it's being built at a padel-only facility.
Interesting. And why do you think that more and more are indoors? Because, in Sweden, for example, most of them are, and that's for a weather reason. It's too cold during the winter and rains a lot and so forth. If you see Miami, for example, is it maybe it's too hot and then you can make sure about the temperature?
Yeah, that's what it is. It gives you more, if it's going to rain or if it's going to be too hot or too cold, it doesn't matter. You can still run your business. So as an owner or as an investor, you know that the facility, the business is going to be open at least 360 days out of the year. And if you, have an outdoor space and weather is that it rains too much, and those rainy days, no one comes. If it's about to rain, people don't come, even if it doesn't rain. And even after it stopped raining, the courts are still wet, depending where, even the clubs that are these days building courts that are just covered. And if there's some sort of rain that comes because of the wind, if there's, sideways rain sometimes, then you don't get any sun. So it's hard for those courts to dry. So the cover courts seem great in theory sometimes, but you have to build them big enough that cover the spaces on the outside. And indoors just gives you always the same conditions, no sun, no wind, no cold, no hot. It's always the same. And that gives you more stability in terms of the potential and revenues that you can get, because you're never going to cancel because of the weather.
That's a good point. The company is obviously called Racket Social Club. So how important is the social aspect of the club?
That is probably the most important part. In one of our locations, this last weekend, we had a pickleball event that was 100 people that came just to play. And actually, a lot of them, because we didn't have enough courts for all of them to play at the same time, started playing Padel. That was fun. But offering not only in coaching and not only the tournaments, but the social events, we have a lot of open play events. Open play are just days where and times when people just come and play. We offer a lot of those at different times of the day, different days of the week. It's a key part of what we do as a club.
Yeah, I think that too. And that was something I noticed in Sweden as well. As I mentioned, those who just opened something in a warehouse, and many of them didn't even have staff, you just checked in and out with some type of code. Those who built they had a cafe, a shop, they had a coach, some trainers, and there was the social aspect around and something extra. Those were the ones that survived and still are open to this day.
Yeah, I grew up in Argentina, and even I was there last week too. And I don't know any of the clubs that don't have staff, that don't have place to sit after or even before you play. That is the most important part besides the having the courts. If you only offer the courts, you're not offering the whole experience. And people go for the experience of, spending time with others, not just to go and play. They want to spend time with their friends and their colleagues. And even during tournaments, you play and you need a place to hang out. So I don't know any clubs that are building community when you punch in code to go in.
Yeah. What is the most difficult part of building a successful padel club?
The most difficult part, I would say, is finding the right people that are going to help you run the club. That is the most difficult part. And today in the US, besides that, is finding the real estate, because there's so many things that have to fall into the right place. You might find the right location, but maybe that location doesn't allow you to build the club. Or if it does, then the ceiling height is not great. And if everything is good, then you don't have enough parking. So then you might not be able to offer, 6, 8, or how many courts, you can fit in the space, because the town or the city requires that for every court, you have X number of parking spots. And if everything is perfect, then the rent may be too high. So people and real estate, I think, are the two most, important parts of the business.
The real estate I understand, and especially, for example, in New York, let's say it's very high prices. It's hard to find the space that you said have these requirements. The people that you mentioned to find the right staff, is that because Padel is kind of new and you don't have the knowledge yet in a lot of people in the US?
Coaching side is one part, because you could have the right people building the community. Like we have ambassadors that are working with us and they are new to the sport. They bring all their friends and then they reach out to others who bring their friends. So they don't need to know how to play or how to coach, and they build community. So that's great people. And then on the coaching side, yes, there are not that many coaches that have been involved with the sport, because the sport is new. Even myself, that I grew up playing the sport, I haven't really coached for a decade or 5 years. So I've been coaching, even though I don't coach that much these days, for 3 years. But I've been coaching other racket sports for over 20. So I do have a lot of experience coaching. It's hard to find a lot of good qualified coaches in the US, simply because no one has the experience of having played in the US. And if you're recruiting coaches from outside of the US, the immigration and getting the work permits is the challenging part.
Yeah, especially nowadays, I will assume as well. The political
It's
landscape.
always been difficult. Now probably it's a little bit more difficult. In the US, and I'm not an immigration expert, but I dealt with that in my personal case, and I've seen it with others. You have to show that you're an expert in what you do, and there's not that many others from the US who could do what you do. So in the case of Padel, I think it's someone coming from outside of the US could probably show that no problem if they had experience. But the process of timing of when you're applying for a job and how long it takes to get approved, that's the tricky part.
Yeah. So except for people and real estate, it's also much more expensive to build a paddle court than it is to build, let's say, a pickleball court, because you need a lot of the sand under, you need the walls, you need all of those things that, I mean, is more expensive than some other racket sports, let's say badminton or whatever.
Yeah, if you think about building a club that has walls and a ceiling and bathrooms and technology, so the actual cost of a paddle court is not that much when you think into a project that is going to be super expensive. If you have to build a parking lot and do landscaping and all the electric and cables and connections and putting the AC, the HVAC system, that is really expensive. The court itself, yeah, it's gonna be, I use $50,000 to $60,000 per court. All things considered, it's not that much compared to a $2 or $3 million project that includes the entire facility. So yes, it's a little bit more expensive, the court, than a pickleball court, but in the big scheme of things, it's not relevant to the price tag of the entire project.
Interesting. Where do you see, because you're from Argentina, which obviously is one of the top countries in terms of paddle, if we see on a performance level, where do you feel like US is sizing up today, and how does the future look if we see it from an elite perspective?
I'm seeing it today that there's more and more competition in the US. There's more and more, I would say, second-tier players coming to participate in prize money events. There were, if I'm not mistaken, I don't know, there were a bunch of teams that qualified through a qualifying event and played in the Premier and P1 in Miami a couple of weeks ago. I think the more competition in the US, then the local players are going to get better and better and better. And the more competition is going to allow former rackets players, tennis players or platform tennis players, to get more into the sport. I'm not going to say that the US is going to be better than Argentina or Spain, but it could be right behind them in terms of success at the professional level. And in terms of the size of the market, I think it's going to be number one. And I don't know when, but it has the potential to be number one in number of players and courts. And it's not going to happen overnight, obviously. But I see no reason why not, especially what I've seen in the last couple of years, where everyone is excited about the growth of the sport, of what the sport represents, and how fun it is.
US has a tendency that when they want something, they make it happen. And as you said, they have the people, they are 300 plus million, they have the funds. So I believe, as you do, that they will probably be on top at some point here in the future for sure.
Yeah. In terms of, professional level, like to beat Argentina or Spain, I don't know if that will ever happen. I think a lot of things have to go right for that to happen. But right behind that level, I think the US will be competitive in a few years with all the other countries, because more and more players will participate. And the professional tour, the tournaments that are happening in the US, there's some pretty good, Spanish and Argentinian players that are competing, which is helping elevate the level of the local players.
Do you think that padel can ever become one of the major sports in US? Like we're talking baseball, football, hockey, basketball?
I don't think so, but maybe I'm wrong. It's so baseball and football and are so embedded in the society that even sport like tennis, which is a major sport in the US, is not at the same level in terms of participation.
Yeah. I would agree with that too, but it's interesting. I was speaking to a gentleman from Pakistan who was building some paddle courts. They were planning on building 2 courts, and then it just became so popular. So they built, I think, 6 or 8 in the end, and they took some space from the cricket part that they have, which is bigger. And, so I feel like not that it's taking over, in terms of participants and so forth, but it says something that the interest for paddle is really growing globally, I would say.
Yeah, absolutely. And in the US, I think a lot of the growth is coming from current clubs that are adding padel more than just new. And newer clubs with new paddle courts and brand new businesses are the main way that the sport is growing. But eventually, it's gonna grow with all these other clubs or facilities that adding paddle to their offerings more than just brand new businesses. But yeah, taking, I don't know, cricket in Pakistan, that's a big one. It's like taking, a football field in the US, but taking some tennis courts, and it's been happening. The problem with taking tennis courts in a lot of spaces is that no one is really building new tennis courts, and the tennis players are not going anywhere. So the tennis courts are still busy. But clubs are finding a way to, couple paddle courts in their facilities, and they will continue finding a way to add more.
Yeah, definitely. So I'm interested in your journey as well. And you mentioned you're from Argentina. You have been 20 years as a coach and club director, entrepreneur, advisor. How did a young boy from Argentina get into paddle and made his journey to the United States?
Well, I grew up playing lots of sports. I played rugby, football in Argentina, everyone plays football, so I don't remember not playing. And I started playing tennis when I was 9. And maybe when I was 11 or 12, they installed 4 paddle courts at my club. So I started playing there. And then at 13, 14, I was playing some, smaller prize money tournaments that you would play just on a Friday evening until like 1 or 2 a.m. in the morning. And then I played indoor clubs. It was sort of like the boom in the early 90s in Argentina. And then I continued playing for fun. And when I moved to the US in 2000, and I played college tennis in the US, and I didn't play for a long period of time other than when I would go back. But I got into the sport because of tennis first, and everyone played at the time, and it was a lot of fun. Like I mentioned earlier, the rules were different. You cannot serve and volley, so you have to serve and stay back. Actually, last week I was in Argentina visiting, and those out of the 4 courts, 2 were still there. They were installing artificial grass on them, which was fun to see. So they were actually closed because they were working on them. But you could still see the concrete walls, and the fence was a 4-meter fence. So not that easy to hit it out. And you could actually not go out of the gate because there was a gate that it was closed. So it didn't have an opening. So those are the old courts. And there's still tons of those in Argentina. But that's how I got involved in the sport. They put some courts at my club, and I used to play tennis then. And I played tennis and paddle, and it was, back and forth all the time.
And how was the journey that you went over to the US and working at Racket 360 and Racket Social Club?
It's a very long story, so I'm going to make it short. And so I played tennis in college. I went to the university in the US, and after that, I started teaching tennis. I directed some country clubs in the Connecticut area. I got into platform tennis as well. I did some consulting while I was working as a director. And one thing led to another. I opened my own club. I had some business partners. Then I sold that interest in my club, and I started doing more consulting. I got involved with Racket 360 via my consulting. As of last August, end of July, early August, then I started working full-time for Racket Social Club as its CEO.
Interesting. So, and I mean, that's what you talked about earlier with getting the right people. So great for them to have someone with such an experience as yourself with 20 plus years of experience.
Thank you. Yeah. A lot of the things that I learned in the country club world when it comes to providing excellent member experience is one of the things that I learned from my past experience. And then running events, running tournaments. I think I hire about 100 different people over the course of my career. And then putting it all together with my experience building the club. And now, yeah, it's all coming together at Racket Social Club.
Amazing. There are many people listening that might be in university or early in their career and looking for a job. And you said that you've hired 100 people or something. What are some qualities or something that you look for in people that you're hiring?
One thing is that you cannot teach attitude. I can teach someone how to coach, how to communicate with students, how to organize a tournament. All those things you can teach. You cannot teach attitude. So someone that comes in with the right attitude for me is way more important than someone that has a ton of experience and the wrong attitude. The other thing is that I always help someone move on and get better if they want to get better. So someone that wants to learn, whether it's like I said, on court or off the court. So I'll always look for someone that is trying to get better. But yeah, the experience sometimes it's important, but the attitude is more important.
Yeah, I think so too. That what you said, like the soft skills and the attitude is something that you need to have, and then the hard skills or stuff like that is easier to be taught.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Any advice for people who wants to get into the racket sport industry?
Some think that, being in the racket sports industry is just coaching. There are so many things around the racket sports industry. You could become an expert at organizing events, and then you just run events, you run tournaments, you run leagues, and that's being part of the racket industry. It could be on the marketing side. It could be on the technology side. There's so many companies. Look, Playtomic, Play by Point, Court Reserve, that's been involved in the rackets industry as well. And besides those booking platforms, there are so many others that are in part of the racket industry. It could be on the retail side of things. There are so many things. And yeah, maybe your first step is coaching. But after you start coaching, you start learning about what other avenues you can take. And coaching is a really, I would say, easy one, because it would be something that when you come, especially for the tennis players or even for the paddle players, if you're good enough that you can start coaching, that means that you've been involved with the sport for a number of years. And that is something that it doesn't mean that you have to do it forever. If you want to, you can, but it's kind of an easier way to get involved and to learn more about the industry.
And how does one become a coach, in your opinion? Do you need to take some license or study under someone, or what is a good way?
In the US, and there are a couple of organizations that certified coaches. It's very different than in other countries because it takes 2 days of a workshop to get a certification, and you are licensed. Well, it's not called a license, you're certified. I don't think that's enough. That gives you only the basics. And it's good to always work with someone who has a ton of experience. But besides working with someone with tons of experience and going through the workshop and learning online and then on the court, you never really stop learning. And in the US, everything is very new. So there's only level 1 certification, which is that 2-day workshop that a few organizations are providing. The key is to not stop there and then continue learning. But as of right now, that's the only certification that is offered in the US. I know in Argentina it takes like a year, in Spain another year to become a certified coach. But right now,
Definitely. And coaching is obviously one way, but as you mentioned before, you mentioned some of the booking platforms. So, I mean, if you have a social media interest, you can find an angle to work in racket sports through that, or marketing or events. And basically every business unit, I mean, obviously exists within the racket sport landscape as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Look at, the National Padel League, for example. National Padel League is a league that didn't exist before. Now it's the largest amateur league. So a good friend of mine, Luifer, he's the CEO of the National Padel League, and he's been involved with the sport for a few years. He used to be the coach of the US national men's team. But let's use him as an example. He used to be a coach, and now he's running an organization that it's literally running all the amateur leagues in the US. So that's another way that you can get involved in the sport.
Definitely. I love that. And you give some great interview tips, some career path tips, and networking is another part that I like a lot to talk about. So what would be some networking tips that you have for the young people listening?
I think that sometimes being proactive and reaching out, you never know if someone can answer. So being proactive, it would be one. I reach out to someone who I consider someone that knows a ton. It's not in the rackets industry, but in the sports industry. And I was expecting no response, but I'm like, you know what? You never know. and he did respond to me and gave me some really good tips. So I would say, reach out to people that even if you don't know them, you never know if they're going to respond or not. And that might open doors. And you never know who is going to be helping you. So I always like to help others because you never know if they at some point they're going to reciprocate. And if not, then that's okay. I feel good about helping someone. But if I can, I always try to assist whoever I can. And at the end of the day, if someone opens the door for you, it's so much easier than you going and knocking on doors. So having a good network of people around you, I think, is so, so important.
Definitely. And I love that you're taking the time to help people who reach out. And also, as you said, don't be afraid to reach out to someone. The worst thing you can get is a no or that they don't answer. You don't really lose anything. You lose a couple of minutes of your time and that's it. And I have the same experience as you. I'm reaching out, 250 plus guests on this show. And probably most of them I didn't believe at some point would answer me, and they did. So great way. And it's easier today than ever, right? With social media and LinkedIn and everything, you have a direct access to almost everybody.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I reach out, I write some comments online and then people respond, and you never know. Occasionally people get responses from Messi because they write a comment or they send him a message. You never know who's going to respond to you. And today, like you said, is so much accessible to get in contact with people that they may be able to help you down the road.
100%. So I'd like to end on a networking question as well. So who from your network do you think would be a good guest on this show?
Okay, I'm going to tell you someone who is not that involved in Padel, but he is a master at connecting people in the rackets industry. His name is Jared Chirico. You should get him on the show.
Definitely. What does he do more?
Jared Chirico is the founder of the Directors Club of America, which is an organization that connects all the racket sports, the directors of all the rackets programs in the US. And a lot of these directors are part of this network of professionals, and a lot of them will have paddle courts in their clubs. Jared works at a club with paddle. Actually, I think they have paddle, pickleball, and tennis.
That's great. And talking about networking, that's someone who knows how to network and has built up a big network for sure.
Absolutely, yeah. If you want to talk about someone who knows how to network, he's your guy.
That sounds amazing. Patricio, thank you so much for taking the time to join the Sports Management Podcast.
Thank you for having me. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you for listening to the Sports Management Podcast. Please hit the follow or subscribe button on your podcast app so you don't miss out on any upcoming episodes. If you want to get in contact with me, send an email to sportsmpodcast@gmail.com, connect with me on LinkedIn, or follow the podcast on Instagram, X, and Facebook @SportsMPodcast.
We have the tech to get food delivered in 15 minutes, but we all have horror stories about buying tickets. The Game Time app gives fans the advantage. Get amazing tickets in just a few taps. Fees are included, so what you see is what you pay. And the Game Time guarantee means authentic tickets at the best price every time. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets to concerts, sports, comedy, and more with Game Time. Download the Game Time app and create an account for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply.
Are you trying to get weight loss support through telehealth, but it feels overwhelming and rushed? Check out OrderlyMeds.com now. OrderlyMeds.com was built to be different. Here, you connect with real doctors who take the time to understand your goals, review your eligibility, and guide you through a plan that's right for you. Orderly Meds provides access to proven GLP-1 medications like semaglutide and tirzepatide, including both name brand options and personalized compound versions when appropriate. So you have choices backed by clinical oversight, not guesswork. It's a simpler, more supportive telehealth experience designed around people who want clarity, care, and confidence in their weight loss journey. And your medication is delivered directly to your home in discreet packaging, so your experience stays private from start to finish. Do your research, ask the right questions, then visit orderlymeds.com/podcast for an exclusive offer. Again, that's orderlymeds.com/podcast. Individual results may vary, not medical advice. Eligibility required. See site for details.